Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another week, another conversation with Barry and myself. So if you listened last week, we were talking about how some of us either have acted out as bad girls, bad boys, or that we're attracted to them, actually was the majority of the conversation. But I was thinking about it afterwards, and it led me to think about how opposites attract and why opposites attract. And I know that I always find people that are different to be intriguing, like different cultures, different nationalities. I mean, I think a lot of it's truthfully is because I didn't feel like I fit in when I was younger. I felt different. And so there was a camaraderie in that, oh, you're different. And especially as a British person living in America, so are you, Barry. So I thought it'd be really interesting to talk about why we're attracted to the opposite. But also, at the end, I think it's really important to discuss how sometimes what we're initially attracted to in somebody, the difference in them, is what can also drive us nuts. And actually, if we're not aware of it, end the relationship. It's what we end up, instead of that initial sort of intrigue and fascination can then become something we're hypercritical of and try and change them.
Well, that's the thing, is that what can be attractive can be difficult to live with.
Yeah.
Put it simply. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but there's also the positive side we'll get to as well, because opposites can be additive versus negative. So
yeah. I think we'll talk about positive first, because there are so many positives, and it's just to sort of in the back of your mind remember what it was that attracted you to them before you try and change them. Yourself, this is what attracted me to them. So it's one of those little sort of, as we always say, that self-awareness. Be aware of what's motivating you. But
absolutely,
what really wanted to share some of the strengths of what it is that can bring two people together, and there's just so many different ways they can do it. And some of them I was thinking was just curiosity on how the other half live. It's like an artist that's attracted to a scientist or something like that, or an introvert that's attracted to an extrovert.
It is that sense of like looking how the other half lives, sort of thing. So there's definitely a part of us that's attracted to something we would never do, but they do. It's so exciting because they're different. And it can be that difference that makes it so exciting. That's the whole thing in the first place that gets us involved, because we may look at our own experience, our own way of being, going, yeah, I don't want that anymore. And you find someone else go, oh, they're cool, they're different. So you get that attraction because they're different, not necessarily because anything about anything else. It's just about the fact because they're not like us makes them more attractive.
Yeah. And also what we were talking about again, either last week or the week before, about that shadow part of yourself, that part of yourself that you wish you could be. Say, let's talk for a moment about the introvert and the extrovert. There's a lot of introverts that are completely happy being an introvert. That's the way they want to lead their life. But there's some of them that sort of it's like that looking, with nose up against the window going, God, I wish I could be a bit more like that. I wish I didn't care what people thought. I wish I wasn't so shy or inhibited. And they really love these sort of exuberant, bigger than life characters, because it's showing them something that they long for, but don't tap into or don't access.
It is true. There's so much to talk about. There's so much you can play with that. One thing I want to bring to the table is actually one of the positive reasons for opposites attracting, and I've talked about this in this conversation before about the masculine and feminine polarity, is that the difference between masculine and feminine polarity, which is opposite, is what makes that relationship so sexy and so much chemistry between partners, when you can be on both ends of the spectrum. And so if we're like-minded, it's almost like we have no juice, no chemistry, no desire to be with each other. So sometimes finding somebody who's so much like yourself, there's so less difference, so little difference, it's almost boring. There's no thrill there. So the drive to be somebody different is what is magnetic and so attractive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's that balance. It's that balance of compatibility, but also
Hmm.
leaving room for the differences. And what I'm actually thinking about as you were talking, then I was thinking, well, there's a line where it used to be, not really wanting to bring politics into it, but just I'm going to anyway. But
Hmm.
it's like the James Carville and his wife, or Maria Shriver and Schwarzenegger, people that come from different political perspectives, but
Hmm.
still value each other and value what you bring to the table in your different perspectives. I mean, I have a very good friend who is a Republican. I mean, we often don't talk about politics lately, but it doesn't stop the fact that I don't absolutely love her and find her interesting and her perspectives interesting. Um,
Hmm.
Another one I was thinking of is, especially when it comes to temperament, if you've got two very, very emotional people, and it can sometimes be sort of um, explosive. But if you have somebody that has maybe a calmer or less reactive personality, doesn't mean you become a doormat by any means, but it just means that you can sort of maintain some calm while the other person is maybe getting a little excited or a little, sort of over expressive, put it that way.
You can, in fact, you can be the calm um, harbor for them when they're tired of being expressive. They can come back to be feeling safe and restored because you have that safety with them.
Yeah, yeah. So it's and it can be so many different things. I mean, like some people might not be adventurous. They tend to be
Hmm.
a little bit sort of living in their little bubble and and not really. It's not out of fear or anything. It's just out of lack of awareness. And you can meet somebody or be with somebody that is constantly got their finger on the pulse of where's the new place to go, or the exciting adventure, or the exciting holiday, and that
Right.
can be a wonderful thing as well. And as I say that, I think you also have to be aware to not always leave it to the other person to keep bringing new stuff to the plate. That not to take advantage of that situation or just be like, well, this is not me. That's what they do. Is it's wonderful to have that balance, but it's also a teachable moment of like, oh wait, hang on a minute. I get really excited when my partner brings something new to the table. Maybe I should be bringing something new to the table too.
That's one of the gifts that can happen, which you can definitely be bringing your uniqueness to the relationship the other person has never experienced before. So there can be such a wonderful additive value, additive experience where both of you come with your own um, treasure chest of things you have that are your favorite things the other person doesn't have. So you can really add them to each other and really can expand the relationship in a whole new way.
Mhm. Yeah.
So for me, that's a really powerful experience to have that freedom.
Yeah. I was thinking also that, well, I don't know, but I'll share something personal. But I know that with my ex, he was Italian, and that was a completely different culture to me. Besides, it being, well, we were both obviously European, um, but that sort of Italian family unit, was so different from how I grew up. And so there was this sort of like, wow, this is somebody very different. The way they grew up was very different, and as intriguing as it was, I did notice in my relationship that it was what initially attracted me, which was the Italianness, was also what I found very difficult to deal with. Was the sort of mindset, let's say, the very very traditional patriarchal sort of masculine energy
Yeah.
in the southern Italian culture anyway, where the man is the head of the household, the man leads, you're just subservient, and that was very challenging for me, having grown up with just a mother, not witnessing a woman bowing down to a man and serving a man in that way. I had a very strong, powerful mother. So yeah, how about you? Have you been attracted to somebody to then to then think, oh my God, this is too much. This is not what I bargained for.
I'm just reflecting back on history of relationships. I definitely have considered somebody who was where she was somebody who was so different from me. But I also look at, well, I've been fairly I would say I've evolved a lot in my own journey and my experience. I mean, who I was 20, 30 years ago is very different to who I am now. So looking back, it's like I look through the lens and go, okay, well, back then I attracted somebody so different from me, yet nowadays they kind of match where I am. It's almost like interesting to notice I've shifted so far from where I used to be that from my old wallflower days have become much more involved days. So I'm much more overt and much more extrovert in a lot of ways, which I used to be. Even I'm really ambivert ultimately, but the thing is, I spend more time in the extrovert stage, so I'm much more involved, much more checking things out, asking questions, leading. Whereas it used to be much more like a wallflower, I'd hide out and wait for someone to come to me. So what was attracted to you back then isn't so different now, which is kind of strange looking back on it. So I guess in a way I've changed my perspective. And it's funny because you mentioned about the Italian. My brother, who's also English, of course, is married to an Italian woman. And so their relationship is back, from what I know, has thrived really well. But I don't think, because I think very different from Italian men to Italian women. She wasn't quite so demonstrative, I think, as maybe your ex was. So my brother and her get on really well.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have used the word demonstrative to describe. It was more. It was more.
Passionate.
It was definitely more of the this is the way it's done in our culture, which I didn't know in the
Mm,
beginning of the relationship. This was something that was brought up later once you've had children, but that the men lead and the woman follows, and there's only one head of household, and
right.
this was a cultural thing that was just, what did they say? A stove throw too far or a bridge too far. It was just like, I don't think I can quite conform that much, but
Right. Yeah.
but
Absolutely.
so but again, what I'm going back to what you said because I find that interesting. So you have evolved and changed. So I would say that what you're describing is that initial, when you were more of the wallflower, as you described yourself, and you were attracted to more extrovert women, that was probably more a case of your shadow being unexpressed, that part of you that saw in them something that you felt was missing in you. And what a wonderful example of, we talked about this last week or so. Again,
Hmm.
it's that when we have an attraction to somebody, it's not just, oh, they have something that I'm attracted to. Is like they are demonstrating a part of ourselves that we are either ignoring or laying sort of dormant within us. So
Right.
that's a classic example of how we can grow through observing what is attracting us to another human being.
Yeah.
So you're now more attracted to the same type of woman, but you've changed. So does that? Wondering if does that make the relationship a little less exciting for you, or how would you describe
No,
that?
it's almost like it's easier to dance with them,
Mm,
because before it was much more of I was say a hurdle, but much more of a challenge to dance with them without them having to come to me and like where I was playing at. So no, it's easier. It's almost like I put myself onto the ice rink now, so I can skate with somebody else. Different
mm.
analogy completely, but the idea, but the idea being is that
A
that
few
that
more people,
that it's like before, instead of sitting in the bleachers and not even playing, I'm
yeah,
at least in a place where I could. Because the thing is, also becomes that I can become more able to meet them where they are, which is kind of fun. So in a way, it's not I'm the same as them because I'm not, but I'm closer in terms of I can enjoy and appreciate more what they're doing and who they are.
yeah, yeah. It does, and I think that's really great. And I think that really does again point to the healthiness of being attracted to somebody that's different. It's like you were on some level subconsciously aware of the fact that they held something, a part of them was a mirror to what you needed to develop in yourself. So that was something that you were seeking. So
Yeah,
that was getting fulfilled within you, and it obviously led to you living a fuller life, a more expressive life, not just Barry just being a wallflower. So I think that's great, and that is the beauty of opposites. It really is. It's the examples we set for each other as well.
it is something that I definitely. I mean, just it wasn't something I can prescribe as saying the right way to do things, but I'm just for me, just worked for me to shift that way. So I'm grateful I did choose to shift. Not like I must change. It's just like my life evolved that way. So in a
Yeah,
way, I guess it was I got a glimpse, and in a way, not supposed to, that a negative or a darkness inside or a shadow part. It's more about the fact is that I saw something. I mean, I'm looking back in hindsight, considering this if it's true or not, but it feels like I was looking back and seeing that place where I was being desirous of being more alike. And so that was a nudge or a reminder or a sign of saying that's what's available.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
accordingly.
Clarify here. When I use the word shadow, I in no terms do I mean anything dark, but it just
Okay.
means a quality that hasn't come to full expression. It's a
Okay.
quality that may have not had been valued or allowed. You know, some of us, some of our shadows, like my shadow, might be attention getting or something like that. You know,
Mhm.
like I still get very very uncomfortable with a lot of attention on me. But there's that little part of me inside that goes, "But I wanna be seen," you know, and then there's the other part that says, "No, we don't do that. We don't grab all the attention." So that it's an interesting thing. It's just a, you know, it's like being spontaneous. You know, some people might not allow themselves to be a risk taker or spontaneous. They have to be very sure and steady of where the next footing's taking them. And, you know, sometimes that balance of having somebody be more, again, my ex was very spontaneous and very exciting in many ways and took risks that I never would have taken.
Mhm.
Um, so it did bring an element of and yet, as I said, my more sure-footed steadiness of wanting to know that this was stable before going there was a good quality. It was a very good balance we both needed, and I think we both hopefully respected in each other as what we were
Mhm.
both providing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So you were going to say,
Well, I was going to say that I want to reassure is that what I was saying about my own journey doesn't mean that if you attract somebody's opposite, you should make the effort to change yourself. It's not necessarily the case because what you're saying exactly that is you don't have to. It's really
yeah.
about having the balance.
Yeah, and it's oh yeah, there's not it's not about changing yourself. It's all about self-awareness and checking in and just saying, is there a side of me that would like to be a bit more expressive in that area? And it might be, no, it's not. I'll leave that to my partner. Thank you very much. One in
Right.
the relationship is enough. So it's not you know, it's not always that you want to become like each other. It's just that you respect and
Hmm.
admire differences as opposed to criticizing them and trying to change your partner, which I think we did a show a while back called "The Futility of Trying to Change Your Partner." So,
Hmm.
oh my god, it's
Yeah.
so fun.
No, but
So
and the thing, well, sorry, the one thing I want to speak about the opposites attract is that oftentimes we're surrounded by oftentimes people who are like ourselves. So to meet somebody who's opposite from that is such a they stand out from the crowd, so to speak. They become noticeable, which is
mhm,
what could be what inspires the attraction in the first place. So the opposite part is almost um, the semaphore signal saying, "Yes, I'm here," so it can be seen. So it can work that way as well.
mhm. Yeah, and I'm thinking of some other, you know, things like I know, and I've witnessed in couples where both partners are very secure and they have a very peaceful, you know, relationship. They're both secure. And I've seen it where one can be a bit more jealous than the other one's more secure. And it can really help that person that battles with jealousy because they've got a steady example of, oh, my partner's not sort of, you know, running away with these thoughts and
Right.
acting irrationally. So it can temper that. Whereas I've also seen when two jealous people come together, it's hell. I mean, it's such a destructive quality. I think that's a show we should definitely do on jealousy, and
Hmm.
because it can just tear away at any foundation or any fabric of the relationship. So again, you know, two jealous people, you know, that's not going to work. But
No,
I mean,
not me.
yeah, I mean, the hope is that both people are secure enough in the relationship. But
Yeah.
definitely, if you know that you have a little jealousy in you, be careful of being with another jealous person because it feeds each other, and then it can be if you're not very conscious or aware, you can be deliberately instigating the other partner because you're feeling jealous. You want them to feel jealous too, and you start playing this pretty negative game of provoking each other into that state. And then,
Absolutely.
yeah, and then there's other ones like I often think of most people going, who are they? But yeah, I remember Paul Newman was, I'm trying to remember his wife's name, but she was into ballet and he was into, being a race car driver, and
Right.
he hated the ballet, but he loved that that was her thing. And she hated that he raced cars.
Mhm.
Again, it was she respected that that's what was something that he was doing when she first met him. It's part
Right.
of who he was, and it made him more alive and more vibrant. Equally so, she was more alive and more vibrant when she pursued her hobbies and her passions. So even if you are not sharing in your partner's hobbies or passions, but just appreciating that they are getting fed, it's like sort of fed something outside of the relationship that enriches the relationship.
Yeah, it's not your job to be the person who keeps them fed the way they want to be fed, because that becomes really toxic ultimately, or actually codependent. So to provide for or allow them to feed themselves as to be fed from outside, so they can be fully in the relationship, is a healthy way to do things. Absolutely, yeah, because it's so tempting to think that we got to be the provider for all our partners' needs, which is insane. And when
Hmm.
that different, it's easy to see that you can't do that. So to be kind enough and compassionate enough to let them source from outside that way is fundamental.
Yeah, and again, I'm thinking about a couple that I work with that um, his hobby, which is a very innocent hobby. I mean, it's so innocent, but it's very upsetting to his partner because she looks at that hobby as taking away from her, taking attention away from her, as
Yeah.
opposed to looking at it as, wow, I wouldn't be a hobby I'd choose, but it's a completely innocent hobby and it's,
Mhm.
done in the house right next to her. So it's not like he's, you know, off playing golf 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. It's
Right.
very, maybe I think it's a more meditative process for him. So
Mhm.
it's part of his meditation, part of his calming, self-soothing, whatever it is. So
Right.
again, just give room for each other. But did also want to just touch on some of the pitfalls of some of the opposites can attract. And I think that can come into play, especially like in parenting, when you have two very different views on how to parent your child. That can be a very challenging.
That would be, you definitely have to discuss that between the two of you before you even approach how you're going to talk to your children. Yeah, that would be that. I mean, that's the challenge with, that's almost like the challenge about divorced parents, how they can really change the kid to their perspective and then throw them at the other person. So,
Mhm.
in a opposites attract experience in a relationship, you don't want to have that happen. So you definitely want to discuss how to be, how to approach your child from common ground, so that your child gets a unified approach. Absolutely, yeah, because that could get really messy.
Yeah, and then the other one that just flashed in my mind was, um,
Okay,
are you monogamous or not? That could be a very two very different perspectives on.
that would be interesting. I do know of a couple, not personally, but through a friend of mine, where he's monogamous and she's not. I think it is. So they have a relationship where he's loyal to her, but she has more than one partner, and it's okay for both of them. I don't know how they do it because I couldn't do it myself,
Yeah,
but they get it working. So
yeah.
it's possible.
No, I definitely. I mean, years and years and years ago, I worked with somebody in the film business who shared with me that her husband of many years, when they first met, he did say to her, I am not the monogamous type. I'm not a one woman man. And I never want to lie to you. And if that's okay with you, then I want to marry you and have a family with you. And I remember I was very young and I was like, what? And you married him anyway? And she said, well, he gave me the dignity of making up my own mind. And I thought that was so beautiful. And I
Okay.
thought, wow, you know what? That is so true. don't, and it she said, "Just don't tell me. I don't wanna know." But thank you for at least giving me the choice of that I'm
Yeah,
gonna that relationship. So
that's a
that's
different way of doing it, definitely. Yeah,
but again, I think that's something that people are afraid to talk about. They're afraid that they will lose their partner if they were to say that. But how much richer and closer they became because of the honesty in the beginning of this is who I am. Take me
yeah,
or leave me. Really, I mean, and I think it's very, very healthy to have that level of integrity and confidence to broach those difficult subjects rather than just say this is a side of me that I'm going to keep secret because I'm ashamed of it and I'm afraid of losing my partner if I'm to share it. Because there's many people that either live in open marriages or as you said, one is and one isn't, and they work it out. But I do
yeah,
definitely believe that it's a big one for me is honesty and integrity in that situation.
yeah. It's got to be something that doesn't feel like you're being violated on some level, because it can sound good on paper, but the experience level can be very different. And so having something that doesn't threaten your emotional well-being can be workable, but
Mhm.
how opposite it is going to be very conditional about what works for you and what doesn't. And so the idea of one polyamorous and one monogamous, for some people it can work, but I think it's a very small minority of couples where that is functionally effective for them to do that. Because for most people, it's one or the other, black and white. There's no crossover.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think, yeah, but it's rare that both people can be healthily okay with that. I think some
Hmm.
people say they're okay with it simply because they are so codependent with their partner that they'll just agree to anything so that they can maintain the relationship. And if it's coming from that place, it's not healthy.
Right.
You've got to really check in with you. Are you completely okay with this?
Hmm.
And then trying to think of some others that conflict styles. That's a huge one. I mean, having
Yeah.
I mean, somebody is literally can get physical when it becomes when conflict arises, or even if it's not a punch, but just something like right in your face, spitting in your face with anger. I mean, that is as opposed to somebody who can calmly talk about issues. But if somebody goes ballistic every time, I mean, is that something that you
I'm
want to
not
do
sure.
as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure that would work in the area of a opposites attract type relationship. I think it's more going to be surprise. You didn't expect that, so you know.
I know I am thinking of that sort of very, um, hot-headed, um, Latin, fiery. I mean, I saw it straight off. I saw it the first day, and I was like, "Whoa, whoa."
And you didn't put up with it. You didn't walk away. Then you stayed for a bit more longer though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's like it was like I don't know what because it was I can't say I didn't see it. I saw it, and for some reason, again, it was that probably during that period of time when it was the sort of I was attracted to the bad boy, but it was
Right.
there was no warning signs going get out of here now. There was oh, this is my type, you know,
Yeah.
a little anyway. But there's lots that again, as I said, always be aware that something you might find really irritating in your partner or something you wish they changed, just double check inside if that was something that initially attracted you. And do you really want them to be different? Or can you go back to that feeling of, this is pretty special. This is something about this person that intrigued me and brought excitement to the relationship.
That's a. It's been a big show to make that point. It feels like. Feels like it's been a big show to make that point. I mean, we covered a lot of territory for this, but it is a good point to make ultimately. So I
Yeah,
love it at this point.
great. All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And have a great week. And we will see you next week. Thanks,
See you
Barry.
next week. Fun. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye bye.
We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.